Well, good evening, WNBA and women's basketball fans, and welcome into the WNBA 365 Network, your 24/7 365 comprehensive home for everything revolving around the WNBA and the women's basketball world on a pretty cool night. It's Back to the Future Day. It's October 21st, 2015. And, of course, the guy wearing the shades, like Doc Brown from Back to the Future Part 2, is Cal McClurg here in studio from Studio 171 San Diego. Rejoined, of course, by the rest of our starting lineup here, of course, and our hangout, of course, Eric Nemchok, great writer from today's Fast Break over in Elmhurst, Illinois. And, of course, the other two SoCal people in this hangout is Crystal Thomas and Tanisha Stewart, both up in Los Angeles. And, of course, Reagan Patrick joining us back over in St. Louis, Missouri. Guys, good evening, and how has Back to the Future Day been for all of you today?
Hey, it's been normal for me. Just same
normal day.
Hey, well, I got the shade, so I'm in.
Well, the Cubs did not win the World Series.
They sure enough didn't.
So the movie was wrong about that.
Yeah, the movie got a few things wrong, as they've gotten a few things wrong, but hey, it is a pretty important day, and yes, I'll be wearing these shades, folks, for the next hour long of this program, so bear with the reflection off of the Doc Brown shades here. With that, though, guys, we're going to get to one basketball story, then we'll get to our third team breakdown, which, of course, is the breakdown of the 2015 for the Connecticut Center. And again, folks, as of this evening and after a thorough talk with the rest of the team here, we'll be having 60-minute programs to make sure that we have enough time to get through everyone in here. I feel like we kind of rushed ourselves a little bit last show here, so we're going to go to an hour-long format to get more in-depth and more analysis from the rest of the team. But anyway, guys, we'll begin, though, with a story that broke during the season, but it involves, though, the women's college game specifically. Now, as you guys may know, there was a few minor tweaks done by the NCAA at all levels, from D1 down to D3, switching the format of the women's basketball game specifically to now a WNBA/FIBA style now, where it is now going to be played under 4 10-minute quarters and a 24-second clock. The only shift change for the men's game, other than it being a two-half 20-minute contest for both those halves, and it will now be a 30-second clock. Beginning with a few of the ladies in here, we'll go back and start with our rookie again, back over with Reagan this evening. Now, Reagan, obviously, the NCAA normally changes rules for a lot of things, whether it's in whatever sport it is, though. But I think, though, with this change specifically for the Women's Basketball League, or the Women's Basketball Games, I should say, were you a little bit surprised, I guess, if they did this type of change only to the women's game and not both games? Or what do you think about the new rules, again, coming into fruition for the women's season coming up in a couple of weeks, and why?
I don't think I'm that surprised, honestly. I think this is something that a lot of the coaches in the women's game wanted, and especially Gino. I know he expressed his opinion a lot. So I would say he got what he wanted, and I can't wait to see how this goes. I mean, I think it's a great idea. It'll definitely get them ready for the WNBA lifestyle, and I think it'll move the game a little bit faster.
Crystal, obviously, out of all of us in here that's affected by this, working college basketball is Mr. McFly over here in the hangout, because I do cover and do announce Division II women's college basketball, so I'll be probably more affected by it. But I think, though, Crystal, like Reagan said, though, but I also think, though, long overdue, I think, for them to kind of go to a format to kind of better these student athletes and prepare them, I think, a little bit better for the actual professional game on both levels, though. I think, though, that with the women's game changing, that we might see the men's game go to a 4-minute, 12-quarter system in a couple of years, perhaps. That's my gut indication, because we kind of know they kind of guinea pig minor league games, or sometimes, or in the NBA's case, they guinea pig the WNBA for draft lottery changes and other things included. So, Crystal, with the women's game specifically going to this type of change, how will it kind of affect your take on the women's game, I guess? Because I think we all agree here, or will agree here, that I think it was long overdue. But when you heard about the change, though, what were your thoughts, and why?
My thoughts was just about time. Like Reagan said, I think it will help the up-and-coming college players adjust to the league a little bit easier, since there is 4 quarters now. I think it's long overdue, though. I mean, the WNBA changed to the 4 quarter system a while ago, so I think it's just only right that college did it. I'm glad they did it. Like Reagan said, Gino was trying to get that for a while, and it finally happened. So I think there'll be a little bit more competitive basketball now that there's a quarter system. Things won't feel so rushed.
Tanisha, I will never forget this, and it's a little bit embarrassing for me covering basketball for a long time. It was one of the sports I cover, but I never forget though my first ever college basketball game, but pre-2004 when I went to see UConn women play when I was back there for vacation, was a San Diego State men's basketball game. The first year Steve Fisher came to the program from Michigan. And when the second half at the time ended, I thought, okay, it's halftime. Great, we got 2 more to play. Little did this little 8-year-old boy know that they only play 2 halves in men's basketball at that time, and I was leaving the gym already. And I thought, but Dad, they played 2 quarters. What's up with that? Until he told me about the rules in there. So, Shorty, long overdue, yes. But what are your thoughts about the women's game kind of adapting this system to, as we've all said, though, better prepare these student athletes for their future, whether they play in the W or even play pro basketball overseas, and why?
Most definitely. I think the new change does get the NCAA players ready, because every year when they talk to, the rookies coming into the WNBA, they always talk about the speed of the game and how, they have to get adjusted. So with this new rule change, it will help the adjustment go, a little bit more smoothly, because the college kids will have, the, new rule change and everything, and, they'll already, be getting adjusted. So instead of, the former rule where they had the 30-second shot clock and they had time to regroup, you'll have the 24-second shot clock, so you're pretty much one and done there. So I think the change will be definitely good for them.
Eric, obviously, as we've all said, long overdue, though, again, to kind of get one asset, or one facet, I should say, of the college basketball game up to snuff. And I think, as I said, though, I think the men's game will undergo some type of thorough breakdown later on, though. But I think, though, that as we've kind of said, though, a little bit, Gino Auriemma, kind of the pioneer, you can kind of say, I guess, trying to go to the system. I would even assume that, maybe even Pat probably thought of this too while she was still coaching as the full-time head coach at UT. But Eric, though, obviously, I know that coaches probably wanted more pull and leeway to get this system. Of course, when you do have former players like Don Staley and like Cynthia Cooper-Dyke and these other, WNBA players that, had to kind of play the college game as a pro. Eric, in your mind, did they get it right by finally going to this system of the quarter system, and why?
Yes, absolutely, they got it right. I think Gino was the one who said it was about standardizing the game, and that's a really great point, because it's not just about the WNBA, because obviously not all of these ladies are going to make it to the WNBA, but they're still going to want to play overseas and whatnot, maybe for some national team or some domestic league where they also play with a 4-quarter system. So it just benefits everybody involved, and also there was 1 fewer media timeout, so everyone should be happy about that, I would say. And yeah, just the standardization of the game. I think it's going to make it more exciting, and it's going to make it less confusing for fans who are watching the WNBA and then going to the college game.
Yeah, I think that was probably the reason why they kind of adjusted it. But I think, though, that we've all touched base here, I think. More so it's about the student athletes, again, because as Eric brought, though, I mean, they may not go play for one of the 12 teams in the WNBA, but if they do play, like a few of my friends, Amanda Rigo, Amber Sprague, and Morgan Henderson, 3 of my friends that used to play at the University of San Diego in 2008, they all continue their careers overseas in Germany, in the Czech Republic, in Poland, and that they told me that they love the 4-10 system a lot better than the 2-20 as it was in college. So I think that in the long run, the NCAA got this right by going to this system. We would love your input, folks, on Twitter at WNBA365, or you can hit any of us up on Twitter. My handle's at Callamac3, at CALLANMAC with the number 3. Or hit up anyone else on Twitter. Eric's handle is at NemChalkE. Crystal's at Pup1010. Reagan is at _rap, RAP, with the number 24. And, of course, Nisha is at ShortyMamba24. Give us your thoughts on the college game being adjusted to the FIBA and WNBA game of 4 10-minute quarters with a 24-second shot clock. Okay, guys, now we'll get to the bigger talking point for the remainder of our program is the third team in the draft lottery this year, which is the Connecticut Sun, finishing the season in tied for last place in the WNBA Eastern Conference at 15-19 after what was a pretty good start to the season, but citing perhaps roster age and an outdated coach sort of doomed the Sun, and along with injuries both to Shanae Agumake, who had microfractured knee surgery over the offseason as well. Reagan, starting with you. Obviously, the Sun were pretty intriguing at the start of the season. A very hot team, but, of course, a couple injuries, a very young roster, much like we talked about so much for the past couple of shows about other teams we had talked about. Reagan, your overall thoughts on the Sun season this year? Obviously, still rebuilding year after year, though, but still, though, getting a lot of good talent, though. But what are your thoughts about the Suns' 2015 season and why?
Well, I will start off by saying that I feel like the Sun have a lot of talented players, and I just feel like that they need a little bit more time to gel. With Shanae coming back next year and with them having the third pick in the draft, I'm pretty sure they'll pick up a guard. I'm thinking Tiffany Mitchell, maybe. I think with all the talent that they have next year, it could be better, but I would say give them maybe 2 more years. And I would definitely not count them out of the playoffs next year. I feel like they're going to make the playoffs next year, definitely.
KT, obviously, we know that, we had talked about the Sun over the offseason in 2014 about, just the roster being so young, and was Ann Donovan that coach? We'll get to her in our next talking point here on this discussion. But, Crystal, your final thoughts on the Sun season? Obviously, started off pretty good, but again, though, I think that it was just the injury problems to Shanae Agumake, again, who had that microfractured knee surgery over the offseason, trying to get her back for next season as well. So your thoughts about Connecticut going forward in 2015 and why?
They started off great. I thought if it wasn't for those injuries, they probably would have made the playoffs this year. They're a really young team, so I think, like Reagan said, once they get together and play for a little bit longer and get a better feel for each other, get a better connect for each other, they will definitely be a better team. And I'm like Reagan. I think they're making the playoffs next year.
Yeah, I think they could definitely be a sleeper. Now, Tanisha, obviously the Sun, as we have said, they've kind of been stuck in the mud the past couple years. Rebuild once, rebuild twice, rebuild 3 times. It's kind of a repetitive action, a broken record of always rebuilding. But, with this roster getting, talented by every draft between Agumake and Thomas, in the 2014 draft, of course, and then last year getting even younger as well. And pieces in place between Alex Bentley and Kelsey Bone, who had a tremendous season, could have, I believe, but may have won the most improved player of the year. So Tanisha, obviously, still not quite out of the mud yet, but they're getting close, though. But what are your thoughts about their season and why?
I mean, their season was pretty interesting. I mean, they had a lot of things against them, like we already cited, the injuries in the beginning, preseason, to Chinea Agumake, Allison Hightower, and Kelsey Griffin. Also, they lost Katie Douglas to retirement. So, I mean, even with those odds stacked up against them, they still had a great season, at least in the beginning. They started off 7-1 in the season. Then after that, somehow went on a 6-game losing streak. Now, even with that, by the All-Star break, they were still decent at a record of 8-7. But then after the All-Star break, they just, completely went to shambles due to injuries to Alex Bentley, I think Alyssa Thomas, and Elizabeth Williams. So with all of that, then after the All-Star break, they went on a 7-12 run, which ultimately led them to a overall 15-19 record, which of course has them bounced out of the playoffs into the lottery.
Eric, obviously, so much, this team in a couple years is going to be very fun to watch as soon as they get some of these players rejuvenated back to 100%. Eric, obviously there were some positives, though, in this season, but I think, though, that Shorty brought up, though, just I think though the gas gauge, fell on empty post the All-Star break. They were 8-7, had a good start to the season. I think though that they were a bit exposed though with the injury problems and the roster age, so on and so forth. But Eric, your thoughts about Connecticut's overall season for 2015 and why?
Well, Shorty brought up a great point. They started out 7-1, but you talk about teams overachieving. I really think Connecticut was due for a regression, and they hit the wall pretty hard going into the All-Star break. Because what was going on with Connecticut was they were fielding some lineups. Again, they had a lot of injuries, but they were fielding some lineups that you just really couldn't score efficiently with. And they were, again, overachieving. They were playing over their heads because they were forcing a ton of turnovers. And I believe they still finished third in the league as a team as far as forcing turnovers. But that's not really winning basketball if you can't score efficiently. They were by far the lowest free throw rate. They had by far the lowest free throw rate of any team in the league, and that's just not getting easy offense. You look at their weapons. When you get Shanae back, when you get Hightower back, and you probably add, I agree with Reagan. Tiffany Mitchell's a good fit for them. When you add those players coming in, you're going to see a pretty scary Sun team, I think, and a very good young core, and hopefully they'll get a good coach to help develop it.
Eric, that brings me to my next point, of course. We'll begin with Crystal on this one. We'll shuffle up the order here for pecking order here for this next topic. Ann Donovan, longtime coach in the WNBA, recently the coach for the Sun the past couple seasons. Probably took an ultimatum like Brian Agler, officially resigned, but perhaps though in formal communication fired for how the past couple years have gone for her as head coach. Of course, won a WNBA championship a few years ago with Seattle back in, I believe, in 2004, perhaps. Maybe wrong on that one. But Crystal, obviously, we kind of thought that, Chris Cinco, their GM, would probably give her a bit more time, perhaps, to kind of let this roster kind of mature. Perhaps give her 1-2 more seasons, perhaps. But I think to finally blow her out may have been a step in the right direction. But, Crystal, your final take, though, about Ann Donovan's tenure with the Sun and why?
Well, we all know that when you have Jennifer Gillum as a coach on any one of your teams, it's not going to end very well. So I don't think it's all of Ann Donovan's fault. Sorry, not sorry. We know I'm a Sparks fan. We've been there. We're not gonna go there. I think. They could have given Ann Donovan more time, but at the same time, I think it was one of those ultimatums where either we fire you or you just go. And I think they feel that Ann was there long enough to turn the team around, but I feel like they possibly should have gave her at least one more year. She has a young team. They were doing well before all those injuries, so I feel like if they would have given her one more year, then we will see if a coaching change is needed.
Reagan, looking over the tenure of Ann Donovan through 3 seasons with the Sun, 2013, 10-24, 6th in the Eastern Conference. 2014, 13-21, 6th in the Eastern Conference. 2015, 15-19, tied for 6th Eastern Conference. So obviously, I think it was long overdue, though. But I still, think that at least one more season could have been, should have been given to Ann Donovan just because, of what she has done. But I think, and I didn't understand what Crystal, was, I still think, that Connecticut may have made one small mistake by letting Mike Tebow go, of course, he led them to the WNBA Finals in 2005, where they lost to the Sacramento Monarchs 3-1 in that 4-game series. But, Reagan, your final thoughts, though, about Ann Donovan's 3 years in Connecticut. I know they didn't go as smooth for her, but your thoughts, though, and why?
Well, I agree with Crystal here. I feel like they should have given her another year. I don't think they gave her enough time. I know 3 years is a long time. Yeah, she had a losing record, but you also have to look at everything that she had to go through with the team. Last year, we already talked about their injuries, and I feel like Connecticut has sort of had a young team for the last couple of years. Maybe that's just me, but like I said, I don't feel like they've given her enough time at all. I think that if they would have gave her another year, then she could have turned some things around.
Yeah, I think obviously it's so tough with longevity in any sport when you're a head coach and you're, constantly falling short of expectations year after year after year. And Tanisha, I think this was just a case of, the upper hierarchy of the Sun saying, look, we've had you here for 3 years and you've gotten us pretty much nowhere out of the mud or the free fall we've been in. We've been in sixth place every year you've been here. So the ultimatum is Crystal Ropp, though, about, either we fire you or you just leave on your own. Tanisha, obviously, it's tough to kind of, really, I guess you really can't pin the tail on Ann Donovan for her 3 years. Obviously, a lot of hurdles in her path between injury problems and depth, perhaps. But what is your final takeaway, though, of her 3 years with the Sun as head coach, and why?
I mean, just so many things happened during her time with the Connecticut Sun. I mean, yes, she finished with an overall losing record of 38-64. She was sub 500, but I mean, I'd say the odds were stacked up against her from the beginning, because she came into an organization in which, their beloved coach Mike Tebow was fired, and pretty much all the players that were upset, and they publicly displayed their upset for his firing, ended up jumping ship, including the team franchise star Tina Charles, who ended up going to New York. But according to John Altavilla, beat writer for the Connecticut Sun, he actually cited that one of the main reasons why she ended up resigning is because it was due to failed contract negotiations with the Sun. Apparently, she wanted a multi-year extension. They weren't ready to give her that, bigger contract, so they decided to part ways. All right, but before I'm done, also the same beat writer, John Altavilla, cited possible coaching replacements for Ann Donovan for next season. All right, so he cited in his list his possible replacements for next year: Stephen Key, current assistant coach of the Connecticut Sun. Also, now former assistant Jennifer Gillum was also in the mix before she took the head coach. Before she took the head coaching position at Xavier College Prep. Jim Peterson, assistant coach of the Minnesota Lynx. Gail Gestincourse of the Indiana Fever, and last but not least, Katie Smith of the New York Liberty. So those are his list for potential replacements for Ann Donovan next season.
You're missing one, Shorty. You forgot to add Crystal Thomas's name on the list. I'd coach him.
You're in there too.
Okay. I must be next to Jennifer Gillum, huh? That they must replace my name with hers.
I don't know how to top that, to be honest with you folks. Okay, so Eric, obviously, so we've heard from the horse's mouth, from the Sun beat writer, about possible coaching hirees, Jennifer Gillum, Stephen Key, and amongst assistant coaches in the league like Jim Peterson and Katie Smith, so on and so forth. Eric, but Eric, though, looking long term, though, how would you pretty much sum up Ann Donovan's 3 years in Connecticut? And in your mind, though, are there any, out of the list that Shorty presented, if you were to hire someone, who are you most likely to hire out of that list, and why? But first, get your take, though, about Ann Donovan and her career with the Sun.
Okay, well, Tanisha kind of stole what I was going to say, but and that was in 2013, after Tebow got fired, which was, I agree, that was a terrible decision. He's one of the best coaches in the league. He has been for a very long time. He obviously, the locker room, it basically quit on her before she could even do anything. You talk about Tina Charles, she had by far the worst season of her career so far, and I don't think it was any coincidence that she was playing that poorly, and then demanded a trade this season. It's basically a sunk year. Then in 2014, they traded Tina Charles because they had to. Carol Lawson was gone. They basically lost the core of their team. So then Donovan is all of a sudden put in a rebuilding situation. That team didn't really have much of an identity. And then last year, you started to see some progress, and then she resigns. So yes, 3 years, as Reagan said, 3 years in WNBA time is a pretty considerable amount of time. It's not a small sample size, but considering what I would have given another year, but if it's true that she wanted a multi-year extension, that might be reason for pause. And going on to the potential replacements now, there are actually two names missing from that list. One is Crystal Thomas. Two is Fred Williams. Because remember the Shock are moving to Dallas, and we're not quite sure yet if Fred Williams is going to make that trip with them. And I think if the Shock do decide to part ways with Fred, he'd be immediately my number one choice because he did such a good job with the Shock this season. I think they were kind of underdogs going in. They got after that, and again, another great start. And obviously Diggins' ACL injury kind of derailed that, but I think he did a great job systematically with them. But if he stays with the Shock, I would go with that's kind of a toughie because I'm not sure who I would go with personally. I think Stephen Key is going to get a good look from them because I think sitting courtside at one of the Sky games when the Sun was playing against them, he was doing a lot of coaching in that huddle. He was doing almost as much coaching as Donovan was. So I think management is going to look at him and say, okay, we started 7-1. I think he was a pretty big part of why that was. So I think they're going to look at Stephen Key as a possible replacement, as an in-house option first, and then if that doesn't work out, then they'll look outside of the organization.
Eric, I think that most times, though, I think, guys, this goes for any sport, that most times an assistant coach in-house, as Eric said, is normally your best option as a head coaching replacement, as Marty McFly goes back in time up in Los Angeles at Shorty's place right now. But I think we all would agree, though, that most times kind of in a LA situation, though, except that was a GM going to head coach in 2014. It was in-house, but not someone on the sidelines to get brought up, though, about Stephen Key. And Eric, as you brought up, though, most times we've seen an assistant coach doing more coaching than the head coach. And again, Huey Lewis is having too much fun up there in LA right now, folks. Seeing going back in time. But anyway, though, I just think, though, that, as Eric said, though, I think that Stephen Key is probably on top of the food chart because, as we brought up, though, assistant coaches, any sport, any level, normally are the number one choice for a university, for a professional team. I know that firsthand right now at my school, at Point Loma Nazarene University, our head coach and the brother of former Phoenix Suns great Paul Westphal, Bill, will be retiring after his 16th season over on the Point. And I believe, though, that one of our assistant coaches who's been there a long time will be next in line for his coaching vacancy when he does call it a career after the season does end. So I think, though, that an assistant coach, I believe, has a better chance to be hired first before any outside options do go forward. Now, Shorty, we'll go to you because I know that you've got Marty McFly, you've got Doc Brown, you've got Biff, you've got the entire cast up there out in front of your house right now playing around with the DeLorean and the hoverboards out there. We kind of brought up about player resentment towards the firing of Mike Tebow. Now, I think that the 4 LA fans in here, between everyone but Eric, but we do love the Sky, though, Eric, so don't feel bad, buddy. But Shorty, I think, though, that we kind of thought there would be some type of resentment from certain players on LA when they blew out Carol Ross in the middle of the 2014 season. So, Shorty, I think it's kind of weird, though, or it doesn't really happen, though, but are you at all surprised, though, that you would see player resentment for management deciding to go in a different direction with a coach that players may love to death, like as we saw, though, with the Sun and Mike Tebow before they parted ways? Your thoughts about, overall player resentment towards some type of move made by upper management and why?
I mean, to be honest, I'm not really surprised because it happens all the time in every sport, I guess Mike Tebow meant more to the team, as far as everything goes. I mean, of course, upper management was kind of, I wouldn't say upset, but they were like, okay, we've been with this guy for a long time because he actually coached, the Sun for 10 years prior to, leaving in 2013. So when the organization decided to make a coaching change, the team just, oh my goodness. Yeah, the interruptions. Yeah, but the team, just they weren't down for it. I mean, even if the organization thought they needed a change, the team members didn't, and they were all so close to him, and they felt like they were successful in his system. They thrived in his system, and when the organization said it's time to call it quits with him, they weren't for it, so they all decided to go their separate ways afterwards.
Reagan, obviously, I know that sometimes players have pull and leeway and they kind of get their way with what they want, in regards to coach or players that they want to bring. And we know that Candace Parker brought Sandrine Gruda in for the 2014 season from her club over in Ekaterinburg. But, Reagan, are you at all surprised, though, to see player resentment in regards to Tina Charles wanting the trade out of Connecticut to go to New York or somewhere else because of what they did in regards to a move that obviously she did not approve of? And your thoughts, I guess, overall, in general, about player resentment towards the franchise?
Well, I think I relate to this a lot. This happened to me in high school. One of my coaches, he went down to middle school, and I did not want to play anymore. It's just, I think what it is a player gets so used to one coach, especially if that coach has been there that whole time, then you form that bond with them, and you don't want to let it go. And so you feel like this new coach is going to come in. They don't know anything about you. They don't know anything about the system, and they're just going to screw everything up. And so I think Tina Charles sort of felt that way. She felt like she wasn't going to get anywhere with the new coach. She just wasn't having it. She just got fed up and she wanted to leave.
Crystal, obviously, I think that you, me, and and Reagan, have kind of had our own resentment, I guess, toward a team we played on, whether it's been in high school, college, or whatever it may be, that we've experienced some type of resentment towards a coach, toward a player, or whatnot. So obviously, I'm sure we're not surprised that Charles wanted out. But Crystal, what about your take though about player resentment towards the franchise for some type of move made that disrupts their bond or even their team chemistry, like we saw with this move that the Sun made a few years back?
I can agree. Like, I've been in that position as well. There's just certain coaches you just don't want to play for, and it's like if there's a coach that you really are attached to, you've been in their system, you know their system, you know how they're going to coach, you know what they're going to do. And it's just like one small thing can ruin your season. Like Eric said, Tina Charles the year prior didn't have a good season, and especially that Mike Tibble got fired. I just don't think she would have played well. Although I do think she should have given Ann Donovan probably a chance, because I think her contract year is up after that anyway. But I can understand that's a pretty big deal, especially moving your coach as quickly as they did.
Eric, obviously, as you've all heard here, with three former athletes in this hangout, obviously we know that we've all experienced it in some way where we've just, flat out did not like a coach or a teammate that we played with. Eric, what about your thoughts though about just seeing this team pretty much rebel, be rebellious towards their own franchise because of one move that they made, to try to see if they can shuffle things up, and obviously they shuffled them up, yes, but all for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, obviously I'm not a former athlete. I'm not a current athlete, and I probably won't be a future athlete. So this is going to sound a little bit ignorant on my part, but hey, man, play out your contract. Not being a fan of a hire as a player is one thing, but that in 2013 that was a full-out locker room mutiny, and that really set the Sun back a few years, Donovan or no Donovan, and yeah, it really kind of tied Chris Yanko's hands, because like all of a sudden, oh my God, all my players want out. Like, what's the GM supposed to do? Rehire Mike Tebow? Hey, Mike, we made a mistake. Come back. No, that's not going to work. So, yes, I understand it from a business perspective, like we went over last week with the whole Sylvia Fowles thing, but she did not display any sort of resentment at all towards this guy. So it's really kind of hard to fault her for wanting to go for a championship. Tina Charles and some of those Sun players, on the other hand, made it clear right from the beginning, we quit. And that's why I said at the beginning, just play out your contracts. And then if you have any ill feelings, then you can take off, but just honor your contract.
Yeah, Eric, I think though that when you sign on the dotted line, you sign that contract with your name and you get, all your money. Is you're there for as long as that contract says, whether you like any moves that they made or not. And I think though, as we brought up, the big word we brought up last week or last show, guys, childish. I mean, just to see this locker room melt down, protest, picket signs, walking outside of the casino back there in Unkinsville, saying we want, we don't want to be here, New York or bust. We'll hitchhike a ride from someone to get to New York, as Tina Charles did. When you sign that, when you sign that contract, you are, pretty much taking the oath, saying, look, I am devoted, dedicated to play for this franchise for as long as I'm here, as long as, and now that I've signed my name, I'm here to stay. And I think though that, it was childish, and that kind of makes you look like a wuss when you really do that. To be very blunt, honest, if you want my honest opinion, when you do something like that, you're being Charmin toilet paper soft when you do that. By you, wanting out of your contract because you don't agree with what upper management, who is trying to move puzzle pieces to make you and your teammates better. That's something that you absolutely cannot do. And as we said, and as Eric said, though, I mean, you can't just pick up the phone. You can't just say, hey, Mike, we'd like to bring you back to the team. Can you come back and help us out? No, because you've got a better job, with the Mystics, and he's done a great job with them. We'll get to them, of course, later on in the week and into next week, of course. But as Eric said, though, I mean, you can't just, tweet someone, text someone to come back, to retake the job that you just basically said, there's the door. See you next time. Good luck in your future endeavors. So obviously, as we said, guys, the Sun finishing in at 15-19. Crystal, starting with you on this one, what will be the biggest, other than perhaps what it was, other than maybe the head coach, we've already brought up Jen Gillum and everyone else, but which player coming back from injury that you can think of, other than perhaps Shanae Agumike, besides her, what other player will be essential to the Sun for 2016 and why?
Besides Shanae, Shanae's not an option. I can't pick her.
Keyword besides Shanae. Bolded, italicized, underlined, and shadow it. Besides Shanae.
I think Elizabeth Williams would probably have an impact. They were, especially in that forward center position, they were kind of soft there. I think she will help coming back in a great deal, because Connecticut was not a very big team overall, and I think the loss of Shanae really exposed them to the size factor. So I think her coming back will have a huge impact.
Reagan, how about you? Again, bold, italicized, underline, and shadow the word besides Shanae Agumike. Biggest X factor returning from injury for Connecticut is?
I think I'm going to have to agree with Crystal on this one. Elizabeth Williams. She's definitely going to help out a lot. And I feel like she likes to do the dirty work. So she's going to get the rebounds. She's going to get the putbacks. She's just gonna grind in the paint, honestly. So I think she'll help out a lot.
All right, so it's 2 votes for her. So Tanisha, to you again. Biggest X factor returning from injury for Connecticut in 2016 will be?
Well, my vote goes to Chelsea Gray. Now, she wasn't, she wasn't injured a lot, but she did suffer minor injuries maybe during the season. But I say she'll be the biggest X factor, or at least one of the biggest X factors for next season. I mean, I got some of her stats right here. Just, in her 2015 season, she scored 6.9 points per game, 2.3 rebounds per game, and dished out 2.7 dimes, per game. So I think with that, I think she'll improve on those numbers coming into the 2016 season.
All right, Eric, you've had some time to think, buddy. Most important player from the Sun returning from injury in 2016. The award winner for you is?
Shanae Agumike.
Besides Shanae Agumike.
No, I don't care.
Good try, though. Good try, though.
I agree with Tanisha in that I think Chelsea Gray is going to have a big year next year. I think she's going to really help the team because she can shoot, she can score inside and out. She's obviously a great passer. She was, I believe, in the top 5 in the entire league in assist rate last season. So, her ceiling, in my opinion, is just tremendous. But as far as players who are like injured a lot, I'd have to say Alyssa Thomas, because going back to my point about easy offense, Alyssa's one of those players who can get to the free throw line at a very high rate. She's an excellent rebounder for her size, and she's an instant mismatch problem, pretty much against almost whoever you match her up against. So I think that is going to open up a lot of new things with whoever the new coach is. Alyssa is, in my opinion, a coach's dream because she's going to be one of the best athletes on the floor, but she's also got the skills to put her up against just about whoever. So I think she's going to have a big year next year, and a healthy Alyssa Thomas is going to be pretty big for the Sun, I think.
I think I agree with Eric on this one, with her coming back off the injury, and I don't know, and of course besides, but I think when both those players get healthy, that's going to be a scary duo for a while up there in Connecticut. But I think that Alyssa Thomas is the more important puzzle piece coming back for the Sun off of injury. Guys, there was one player though too that I did say, and I kind of was skeptical about, but yes, Kelsey Bone did win Most Improved Player this year. Eric, we'll start with you on this one. You're the farthest on the Hangout food chain right now at this point in time. But Eric, obviously, I think that all of us in some way had kind of voted for her in some way because of her overall play. I know there was a lot of other great nominees out there, and we were all kind of waiting because they had announced Coach of the Year, MVP, and then what felt like a year later, they finally announced Most Improved Player. So Eric, your thoughts about Kelsey Bone winning the award in her season in general?
Just for the record, I voted for Shanice Johnson. I mean, I didn't vote because I don't actually have but if I did, but Kelsey Bone obviously tremendously deserving because the work she put in this offseason was obviously. Can I go?
Helicopter guys, sorry.
You're good. But I think Kelsey Bone really showed a lot of maturity this past season. I think it was her 3rd year in the league, and the one thing that I think she really learned how to do is slow down, is play the game at a proper pace that really benefited her. Because you think she's one of the biggest players on the floor, she's one of the strongest players on the floor. Again, just about against anybody. So I was really impressed with how she held herself, in the post especially, because she was playing with really great poise, and she really gave the Sun a good bailout option, in the post that was missing with Shanae injured. You saw she had some really great post moves. She's got the pump fake down pat. It's almost unguardable for her, and she's kind of getting that jumper down too. So Kelsey Bone is going to be a big part of them going forward, and I really look forward to seeing what her and Shanae can do together.
I'm sorry, folks. I've lost my mind over here. We've gone from Back to the Future now to Call of Duty 5 over there in L.A. My goodness gracious. This is the best show of all the ones we've done since the relaunch. Okay, Crystal, let's get back on track, please. My goodness, I'm working up a sweat over here. My goodness. Okay, Crystal. Obviously, so Eric said that he voted that if he had a vote, which I think we all should have a vote in this hangout because we're pretty, we're a lot better media members, I think, than they have the league website. Okay, Crystal, your thoughts about Kelsey Bone winning the Most Improved Player this year and why?
I too agree with Eric. I do think Shanice Johnson, or maybe even like a Marissa Coleman, probably should have been in consideration. But Kelsey Bone, okay, Chelsea Bone.
And now we've got the Rocket Rods from Tomorrowland at Disneyland. My goodness, Shorty, what's next?
Kelsey Bone.
You may proceed.
Kelsey Bone did make them. Oh, okay, first 48 over there. But Kelsey Bone did make a huge impact for her team, and I can understand why she won it. Like Eric said, she slowed the game down a lot. She used to rush. Okay. She used to rush shots.
Oh man.
She used to block
I
shots.
personally apologize, everyone.
Are you okay over there?
That's uh that's what happens when we vote against Kelsey Bone. I guess you get sirens. But once she slowed the game down, you can see she played way better defensively and especially offensively. Her offense, she raised the bar from last year to where she was. So I can understand why she got it, and I feel like next year she's even going to be even better than where she was. So I think they made a correct choice or one of the correct choices in that pick.
Okay, Reagan. So obviously, okay. So we have Shanice Johnson. We've got Marissa Coleman now in the mix for who we would have picked for most improved player. Reagan, your thoughts about Kelsey Bone winning the award this year and why?
First, I'm just gonna give my opinion on who I think should have won. I definitely think it should have been Marissa Coleman, but or in consideration at least, not should have won. But I think Kelsey Bowman, I think she deserves it. Honestly, she's been working hard on the team. What? I I don't know if any of you follow her on Snapchat while she's overseas, but I do. I've been keeping up with her. And she's been working hard. This year she had 208 rebounds, and the other person on the team, which is Jasmine Thomas, who is like 5'9", had the next highest. So I think she's been working her butt off, and like they say, she slowed the game down to her pace. And I think if she keeps improving like she is next year, she could really help Connecticut. Oh wow.
See, that's what happens. That's what happens when we all don't agree that Kelsey Bone probably shouldn't have won the most improved. Everything was good until we got to Kelsey Bone.
Okay, we're going to go back to me real quick. Okay, to the sound effects lady, stay on the Price is Right, please. I'm not playing for a car over here, nor can I drive it right now at this point in time. I do love One Away Shorty, but I wouldn't be able to take the car because I can't drive right now because my vision's not the best right now because of distance. And it's just... Okay, I'll just do this. Okay. Shorty, your overall take on Kelsey Bone winning the most improved player and why?
All right. First of all, before I get into things, I just want to apologize. I didn't mean for Call of Duty to come out tonight.
Shorty,
but whatever.
Shorty, real quick, like we said, though, we've had way worse things happening here. You and Crystal know us a lot better than Eric and Reagan, so don't feel bad.
Yes. All right, but to Kelsey Bone, I mean, sorry, Kelsey, but my original pick for most improved was Jantel Lavender, actually, because I am a possible Sparks homer. Yes, I'll admit that. So she was my original pick for most improved player. But I mean, after just looking, at overall statistics, I mean, I definitely agree with why they gave her the award. I mean, statistically, Kelsey Bone improved in every category. PPG improved 15.4.
Improved in PPGs, though.
Come on, guys. Improved in went up to 2 dimes a game while shooting 50.8 from the field. So just like I said, in every category she improved. Now I have the overall voting list for most improved, and Kelsey Bone received 15 out of 39 first place votes. Shanice Johnson was second with 9 votes. Jantel Lavender and Courtney Vandersloot were tied for third place with 5 votes. Stephanie Dolson received 3 votes. Emma Mieseman received 2 votes. And last but not least, Raquana Williams received 1 vote.
I think that's kind of crazy. Coleman wasn't considered.
Yeah, she wasn't on the list at all.
Wow.
And that one kind of makes me kind of do this a little bit, kind of one of these, raise the eyebrows a bit because Coleman really had a phenomenal year for the Fever, of course, with a team and a system that she kind of fits better into, not like it was with Los Angeles for those couple years under head coach Carol Ross, where obviously it looked like things didn't really work as a unit with her in LA. But I think, though, with statistically, as we said with Kelsey Bone, and I did that, by the way, folks, the little shoveling act, because Shorty kind of dug deep in the well to find those stats for us, so the overall voting list for the most improved player. Guys, our final topic for
over there.
Say that one more time.
Shorty's the MVP for that one.
Woo! Yep.
She's the MVP for that last block. But guys, real quick though, a closing topic here is the 2015 WNBA in-arena attendance numbers this year came out. Overall final league-wide total of 1,465,432 people came to WNBA games from June 5th till October 14th, an average of 7,183. Eric, starting with you, your thoughts about the WNBA attendance record coming out. And obviously this is another year of great growth in regards to in-arena attendance, and obviously, okay, 7,000 people is pretty respectable for the women's basketball game. Eric, your final take about those numbers and why?
Well, first of all, shout out to the Washington Mystics. They did something incredible this season, and that was draw exactly 7,400 people for every single home game. That's just incredible. I don't know how they did that. Joking, obviously. Somebody just rubber stamped that on the box score. But anyway, I think this part of the reason it's nice to see that the big million, that's a big number that we're shooting for, but I think the league still has to aim higher, because some of these games, like as a Sky season ticket holder, the third game against Indiana in the playoffs this season, it was a disaster attendance wise. They couldn't give away those tickets for free. It just wasn't happening. And so really, I think it's up to the WNBA to kind of figure out, okay, where are we going wrong here? The league attendance isn't really improving year by year. What correlates with that? Is it, these college stadiums? Is it these time slots? There are a lot of playoff games scheduled at the same time as a lot of NFL games, which I don't think made a lot of sense, but that's not my decision. So, yeah, it's nice to see that the league is sustaining these numbers, but I think it's past time that they start improving on them.
Now, Eric, I'm going to go back to you real quick because you brought up a good point, though, about Game 3 of the conference finals for the Sky and Fever.
Yeah.
Does it help or hurt, though, that a lot of these games get moved out of their regular venues to college arenas? I mean, where we saw, the Sky going to UIC again for this year, but of course the Sparks getting booted out because of the Emmy Awards in LA to the Walter Gym on the campus of CSU Long Beach. Eric, what can be done, I guess, to kind of keep these teams in their home arenas during the playoff times? I know that there's other events that will make more revenue, but Eric, last I checked, though, Allstate Arena is a the main tenant there is the Sky, along with a few other knockoff pro teams. They elude me, though, but I believe, though, that the Chicago Wolves play there and someone else plays there as well. But, Eric, last I checked, though, it's, Allstate Arena for the Sky and Wolves, not for, the Circus or WWE WrestleMania 22 like it was in 2007, Eric. What has to be done, though, to keep all these teams in their home venues throughout the entire season?
Kellen, that's a pretty good question, and I honestly don't really have a solid answer for you because I think it depends on the team. It depends on the venue. Obviously Staples Center is way different than Allstate Arena. I mean, let's be real here. But I think what you could start with is getting the schedule out a little sooner. Because what happens with these arenas is that, they schedule these events way prior to when they actually happen. So even though the Sky made the playoffs, yeah, they called up the Allstate people. The Allstate people said, sorry, we've been booked for that date for a very long time now. We can't just kick them out. So I think the WNBA needs to do a better job of scheduling the season in a timely manner. And I think that'll put the teams and the arenas in a little bit of a freer position to work out the playoff scheduling. That's just a start, though. I really have no idea.
Crystal, now that maybe it's a two-part question, first of all, your thoughts, though, about the attendance for the league this year, again, averaging about 7,100 for a game, and again, over about 1.4 million people coming to the games this year across all 12 cities in the league, including the playoffs and finals, so on and so forth as well. But also, though, Crystal, What has to be done though as well to make sure that these teams can stay in their home venues for the entire season? As part B of this question.
Oh, okay. I think I'm back. I thought of froze. Sorry, but I think the fact that they reached to it was $1 million in total for the whole season. I think that's, like I said, that's pretty good. But I think that the league does need to grow its attendance, whether it's better marketing for the games, whether it's better scheduling. Something does have to be done. We should be over that limit, because I know me going to a couple of Sparks games this year, there was about 6 people at some of those games, and I was one of the 6. So, I agree. Something has got to be done. I mean, like I said, $1 million is a really big number for the WNBA, and I'm glad that they got to that plateau. But I do think there needs to be more than just that. And I'm froze a little bit. So what was the second part of that question that you asked?
Well, Eric actually brought it up. Like I said, I hate when people give me ideas, and you're just as guilty, of course, as you already know, with number 3 on the Wall of Fame up here in studio. But, Crystal, the other part was, as we had brought, though, about the Sparks and Sky getting the heave-ho out of their home venues because of prior events scheduled during the playoff run, of course, the most important time where fans need to come out to games. What needs or should be done to make sure that these teams that are permanent tenants of those arenas stay in their home arena for the entire duration of their season?
I would agree with Eric. I think the schedule comes out way too late. I think whoever schedules the games and whoever's in charge of scheduling as far as the in-arena goes, I think they need to have better communication on what's available and what's not. I feel like if that got cleaner, like if whoever is in charge of those two, like if they talked about it more, we wouldn't have to have LA playing at Long Beach Pyramid, or in the Sky's case, have them playing where they played at. So I think
Reagan, obviously, I'll take a quote from a legendary hockey coach, Herb Brooks, who led the U.S. men's hockey team to the gold medal in 1980 when they beat the Soviet Union, talking about his goaltender Jim Craig improving. He said, "Better, not good, but better." That's what I would say about the attention for the WNBA. Again, 1.4 million in arena combined across the league. Again, about 7,100 per game at each game. But again, Reagan, it's better, not good, but it's getting better. So again, 2-part question. Again, your thoughts about the entire attendance for the season, but also, again, what needs to be done to keep teams in their home venues for the entire duration of their season?
Okay, with me being a sports business management major, I just read an article about this actually, and this year's attendance was actually one of the lowest that the WNBA has seen in all of its years. So, but I will say, shout out to the Sparks fans, because we went up 9.4% in our in fans at the game. So yeah, and that was the highest in all the league. So shout out to them, and also shout out to the Mercury fans, because they had 9 sellout games this year. But
that one of them too.
So yeah, that's pretty exciting. Although I hate the Mercury. Anyways.
No shade.
Yeah. So I definitely think that the WNBA we need to find out a way to improve this number. We need to get it up, especially if we want the league to survive a little bit longer, or matter of fact, a lot more longer. And to answer the second question, I don't think the schedules need to come out quicker. I think for teams like the Sky, they need to add in their contract that if they do make it to the playoffs, then they can't schedule anything around that time just for that purpose, for that reason. Like I know in Philadelphia, thanks to my professor, nothing can be held at their stadium around playoff time. Although they may not make the playoffs, nothing can be held there until they find out for sure that they don't make the playoffs. And so I think that can save a lot of time and a lot of headaches, actually. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay, I just want to clean up on Isle Patrick real quick. Are you referring to Wells Fargo Center for the Sixers and Flyers, or to the football and baseball stadiums across the street?
Actually, the football and baseball stadiums. My bad about that.
Hey, no problem. I just wanted to make sure that we got that right. Okay, so Tanisha, obviously, was a two-part question again. Just to reiterate the numbers again, 1.4 million total league-wide attendance, an average of 7,183. But again, Shorty, your thoughts about the attendance, and again, what has to be done. And Ringer, I think, brought up a great point, though, about contract clauses for, Chicago or any team that shares an arena with other counterparts like Staples and Talking Stick and other venues that bring in major events like concerts and entertainment stuff. So, two-part question again, Shorty. Thoughts about the overall attendance, and again, what has to be done to make sure that these teams can stay in their home venues throughout the entire duration of their season?
All right. So before I answer the question, I just want to say that all Mercury fans are probably ready to kill Reagan after tonight. But
Bring it.
any, all right. I mean, anyway, as far as attendance goes, to answer your first question, I mean, to hear those numbers, they're interesting. They're interesting at most, but to be honest, I mean, what the league needs is growth, basically growth in attendance, in actual real paid attendance. Because as we all know, to be honest, sorry, WNBA, not meant to rain on your party, but as we all know, half of the tickets are given away to either, camp organizations or school organizations. So I'm more interested in paid attendance versus, tickets just given away. And so until, the actual paid attendance rise, then we will start seeing real growth as far as attendance. And to answer the second question, I mean, really, to be honest, I mean, you can change up the scheduling, you could bring in contracts, but to be honest, that all those things aren't really going to make a difference. I mean, as long as those WNBA teams do not bring in a high amount of income and attendance to the arenas than other paid acts, I mean, the WNBA is going to once again continue to be treated as an afterthought. I mean, we talked about during the playoffs when the LA Sparks got kicked out of Staples in favor of the Emmys. Yes, and just same thing happened in 2000. Yeah, same thing happened in 2012 during the playoffs for the LA Sparks when they got kicked out of Staples in favor of a Batman Comic-Con event. So, I mean, we all think it's ridiculous and crazy, but at the end of the day, until the WNBA actually bring in real paid attendance, I mean, they're going to continue to be kicked out, in favor for events that gross higher income for the arenas.
Folks, two games that I can recall, maybe three that I can recall off the top of my head that drew pretty well was the Liberty Camp Day game at Madison Square Garden had a pretty full house for their game, and of course the LA Sparks with their season-long We Are Women campaign brought in about 19,000 for that game against San Antonio in late August, and as Reagan had brought up about the Mercury with their sellouts as well, game one of the playoffs that I was at the Stick down in Phoenix was a sellout crowd of about 12,000 at the Purple Palace down there in the desert of Phoenix, Arizona for that game. And I think, though, as we've all said, though, in regards to just about the arena problems again, I kind of think back to this, guys, because it happened to me last week where the Lakers had played a exhibition game versus Golden State down here at the Valley View Casino Center, a.k.a. the San Diego Sports Arena, and the game was canceled during the third quarter because of a floor problem at the venue because as we had talked about, and Eric, I know that you brought up, Bill, about the schedule coming out a bit earlier, before the hockey team came back this year from Norfolk, Virginia, to be the minor league team for the Ducks, this Laker game was on the schedule well before the Ducks brought their team to San Diego. So they had played a hockey game the previous night, and the hockey rink caused the floor to get slippery during that game, and the referees called it off, though, as you guys may know or may not know. That game was canceled in the middle of the third quarter with 2:16 left because 5 different times players had slipped and fell on the court because of the ice being a problem, and fans like me got all their money back. I got my $65 back. Yay for me. But I think, though, that as we said, though, that scheduling needs to be flexible. in regards to any event coming in. I don't care if it's the Scrabble World Championships coming to Staples Center. If there is a more important event like a sporting event that will bring in more revenue than Scrabble or a video game convention or even a Batman convention, that event needs to be tossed out to the convention center where they are supposed to be held and not at a 18,000 seat venue like Staples Center or even Arena. And how they held WrestleMania there in 2006, I still know how they did that, but they made it work out though. Back when I was a fan of pro wrestling. But with that though, gang, we have run out of time for this evening. We will be off tomorrow and Friday because I do have sporting events to cover and work on Thursday and Friday. So we'll see folks back here on Monday night when we do come back to talk more women's basketball, and we'll recap the season for the fourth and final lottery team on Monday night, the Atlanta Dream, before we do move on to the teams that did qualify for the postseason this year. But with that though, folks, until Monday night, please have a safe night and safe weekend. Fly or drive home safely on your hoverboards and DeLoreans, and good night now. This has been the WNBA 365 Network. We are the WNBA, and we are covering anything and everything in regards to the WNBA and the women's basketball world. For Eric Nimchok over in Illinois, and Reagan Patrick down there in St. Louis, and for all of us out here on the West Coast in SoCal, Crystal and Shorty, and of course Callan, and of course Cal McClurg. See you folks back here on Monday. Till then, we'll see you in the past, or maybe in the present, or maybe back in the future again on Monday night. Take care, folks. See you then. Bye-bye.